All set, Karen.
Okay.
Senior, okay, there we go. Perfect.
I just want to say, before we get started, I had a little trouble getting into the last email that was sent by this program ahead of time and had to go to the previous one. So, but I didn't see any emails from anyone. So we will head forward with this.
Yes, I'm not getting any emails either, but I'll keep my eyes peeled.
Okay, so you can see my screen. So IMERC would like to welcome you to a training specifically designed to assist manufacturers regarding alternative labeling. IMERC has a separate training that specifically outlines the requirement of standard labeling for mercury-added products, and maybe you attended that. This training picks up where that training left off. To go over the online process for submitting an alternative labeling plan for products that can't achieve standard labeling requirements of IMERC member states. So how does a manufacturer apply for an alternative to standard labeling requirements? First, let me confirm that not all IMERC state labeling requirements are the same. However, the information provided today will help you to comply with all IMERC member states that have labeling requirements and the option to submit an alternative labeling plan if a manufacturer is not able to fulfill standard labeling requirements. As a side note, a manufacturer is restricted from offering a mercury-added product for sale in an IMERC member state if the product does not fulfill standard labeling requirements or have an approved alternative labeling plan for which an approval number has been assigned by IMERC. This also applies if a manufacturer sells its mercury-added product to another manufacturer who incorporates that component part into a larger product, and they in turn offer that larger product for sale. That internal component technically cannot be used by the larger product manufacturer unless it meets standard labeling provisions, or that component manufacturer can provide an approval number for an alternative labeling plan. So if you purchase a mercury-added component for use in your larger product, this is something that you should keep in mind and confirm. We're going to mention this again just to align ourselves with standard labeling so that when you're faced with the task of determining how and what to propose as an alternative labeling plan, to know the expectations for standard labeling and focus in your labeling plan submission on the big picture of everything that you're proposing to do for your category of products. The proposal should try to get as close to these provisions as possible, meaning if you cannot achieve, for instance, the words contains mercury on your product, are you still able to at least include a crossed-out wheelie bin or the HG in a circle if your product is a lamp? Notice on this chart that prior to purchase is included, and for the purpose of an alternative labeling plan, it should be included in your proposal because that portion of labeling should be something easily achieved. The other important provision is what a manufacturer must demonstrate to confirm that the product in question cannot achieve standard labeling as identified in the law. But what is being proposed will be equally as effective in conveying the information to fulfill the intent of the law. To demonstrate this, the application has a requirement for a narrative identifying the challenges, why a product cannot have all the wording, etc., and the photos to show the product itself. The product is commonly the reason for an alternative labeling request, and putting some thought into an explanation as to why standard labeling cannot be achieved helps the application process. Basically, you know your product and you understand the challenges, then your job is to convey that. Common reasons for the need for an alternative is that there isn't enough space. Keep in mind that the minimum contains mercury in 10-point font, a crossed out trash can, or a crossed out wheelie bin. And if the product is a lamp, HG within a circle is also required. Other than the space for these requirements, this issue might be that the space doesn't allow for 10-point font. Another reason might be that any labeling on the product inhibits the function of the product, or the product gets too hot for any labeling that would last the life of the product. Just as a side note, this product always has some labeling on the black base, the one in the photo. I removed the labeling on it for the purpose of being able to use it in this presentation. The next thought is, what labeling can you achieve? Remember, when an alternative is reviewed, the applicant needs to include an entire labeling plan from product to package to prior to purchase. What else does the customer see? Does the customer see a data sheet? Is there an insert in the package? Is there mercury information there? A catalog, an instruction sheet, how the product is marketed? Is the information on the individual product information section of the website? It's important to include the whole labeling picture, not just a narrative about what you cannot achieve on the product. Now let's talk about submitting an alternative application through my IMERC. It's not an online process per se by filling in the blanks and moving to the next page. The portal is used to submit the information as an attachment and allow the information to be stored online. The application is available online using the link in the upper left-hand corner of this slide, and it's a fillable document. To submit an alternative labeling plan, you must first complete the application, save it to your files, and then include it as an attachment to your online submission. The new alternative process will not utilize older pre-existing application approvals. So although some manufacturers will just say, I had this alternative before, here's the number, there is no data that we have in the online system to search that up. So this process is a new process, and if you had that alternative approval number, say prior to 2023, that alternative approval number cannot be honored. And the reason why is that all of them are expired. So this is a new alternative process and allows for an initial submission and then an easier renewal process. If you did have a previous alternative approval that was utilized by your company in the past, we do recommend that you reference that number, but that does not eliminate the need for all the information requested in the application. All alternatives will be reviewed for approval, and numbers will be assigned by manufacturer and by product category. In addition, models, product names, or even series numbers that can identify your products will be included in any category approval. Therefore, if new products are added or old products have been eliminated, that information must be provided for the next renewal term. Renewal terms, by the way, are every 2 years. As mentioned, if a manufacturer has more than one product category, a separate application must be submitted for each, and as such, a separate individual number will be issued for each manufacturer for each category. To determine what products should go into a product category, note that the application will ask why you cannot meet standard labeling requirements. That reason must be the same for all products within a category. In addition, the labeling proposal, which would be how and where you're proposing to place a label, what's on the label and every other labeling aspect, must also be the same for every product in that category. We strongly discourage, however, manufacturers from trying to make all of their products fit into one category, as the states will be looking online and asking questions to see why, for instance, a larger product is labeled the same way as a tiny product, given there is more space on the larger product, etc. Each category must be evaluated by the manufacturer for consistency in reasoning and the possibility of doing as much as possible to get as close to standard labeling as you can. Even if the labeling is the same, we also recommend that a manufacturer consider placing like product categories together and identifying each product number within that category so as to obtain one alternative approval number. And then when an entire category of the same products is phased out, for example, the manufacturer would just notify the states that the category of products is phased out and the alternative is no longer needed. So the first question on the application shown here is asking for the manufacturer or importer, could be the importer, and the product information. The product is the category of products by their name with as much detail as possible. For instance, if your product is a lamp, putting the word lamp here is obviously not enough. The product identifiers are what your company calls those products by ID number, model name, series, product name. The product application is how the product is used. For instance, there may be a product that says HID lamp. Its application might be high intensity discharge lamps for vehicles. The web link is where states would see your prior to purchase information, at least some of it. And other information to be considered is where you might put comments such as a previous alternative number, how long you've been labeling this way if it's not new. Things like you purchased another company and this is how the product was labeled, you know, or you're phasing out or introducing something in another 6 months. Anything that would help the states understand your complete situation. Number 3 on the application references physical label details on the product and on the package. Section A is on the product itself. Section I is all products. Section II is for a product that is a lamp. If your product is a larger product with a component part that's a mercury-added lamp, you would still use Section I. Only mercury-added lamps would complete Section II in 3A. Subsection I in the application. Location is where you are proposing to place the product label. Attachment method, an example could be a durable label etched on the product base. The significant issue here is it attached in a way that is durable enough to last the life of the product. Label wording and symbols, if there are words, the font size, if it's a symbol. Just remember the size of any symbol should be large enough to be easily distinguishable. If you place a crossed out wheelie bin on a label and it's too small to be able to distinguish what it is trying to represent, then it needs to be larger or propose something else. This is the visible portion of state laws. Visible in a location, where you can find it, visible in size. The text box here on this application provides opportunity for details to help clarify the information provided above. That durable visible label would be information to put there. This is section 3A, subsection II, and should only be completed if your product is a mercury-containing lamp. Notice there are check boxes that identify alternatives that have been approved in the past and set up as levels for potential labeling. Tier 1, that's not shown here, would be standard labeling. So for an alternative option, it is important to say that these are not your only options, but some you can choose from. Also keep in mind that providing a photo of your lamp that shows all of the labeling on the product itself helps to bolster your request. As a side note, the justification narrative in section 4 of this application specifically asks why a specific tier was chosen and why you were not able to achieve the tier above on this list, even tier 2. The FTC label is specific and used on CFLs. That is an option. And no labeling on lamp whatsoever is, of course, another scenario. If your product identifies labeling that is not identified in these tiers, that would be in your narrative. Remember, pictures are worth 1,000 words, but the photos are not enough on their own. You still need the narrative. Section 3B must be completed. Include as much detail as possible. This is the physical label on the packaging. That's the packaging that holds the product. That can be a single packaging or a multi-product packaging. Remember, this approval will stay on file and any future renewals will reference back to this full application for all the details. In all of the information we have provided, we always emphasize that labeling is required on the product, on the packaging, and there must be prior to purchase visible information that must be included at the point of purchase. If online, catalogs, etc. So although there is not a section that completely talks about that in this application where you fill in the blanks, we are placing this notification here as a reminder that this will be required to be a part of your application. However, it's part of section 4 as your attachment narrative. All right, so this is section 4, the narrative. This section fills in the blanks. It suggests photos. We would recommend those as well. This is a narrative that addresses sections in state law. Included as a reminder on the left, where it talks about strict compliance. The proposed alternative would be at least as effective. This alternative cannot be granted until the IMERC member states determine that the standard labeling requirements for the product the products you're identifying is not feasible. This is the information that should demonstrate that the alternative being proposed is at least as effective. That the product contains mercury and should not be placed in the regular trash. We are not quoting legislation, we are providing a general statement. Again, note that the questions within section 4 make a distinction between A and B, in that if you're not talking about a mercury lamp, then you would skip over section B and vice versa. But this is where you can add the details that are significant. If you are proposing standard wording with a lesser font size, a mock-up of the label and any symbols would be beneficial in showing the states what is being proposed. If you are showing an existing label, for instance, that was previously approved, include the details here as to what was approved on the product, the alternative number, and the photo. The narrative and the photos is where you have an opportunity to further make your case. Last, include the information requested in sections C, D, and E. Even setting your narrative up with the questions and then your answer will identify what you are addressing. All information requested, even if you think the response should be not applicable. E, for instance, is required by law and your product is not new. This question doesn't even seem relevant, but you should provide a response. Even if the response is, this is what was previously approved for an alternative, this is our current labeling, we've been doing this for 20 years, whatever. Another thing to note in this narrative, as mercury products eventually are replaced by non-mercury products. If your product has already headed down that path, providing that level of detail to the states is beneficial to everyone. The last, number 5 section is the signature. That is required. If you want to attach this as a separate document once it's signed, you can also do that. Now let's talk about, once we have everything saved, the application, all your documents, the narrative, your photos, and you're ready to upload the online submission. If you have been submitting your notification, this is the same portal. If your association has been submitting your notification, if like a larger manufacturer association has been submitting your notification, you may not be set up in the system. And so if you're not, you just need to contact IMERC at NMOA.org. So this is the first slide of the tutorial. The link for the tutorial is on under the important notes on the first slide page of the application itself, and also on slide 16 of this training. So when you go through the tutorial, the red colored circles on the tutorial are an indication of what buttons to click. One additional item that I want to help before anybody gets into this and there's any confusion. This IMERC portal is a location where you can submit a notification reporting application every 3 years, a phase out application and an alternative labeling. But when you get into the system, as the circle on the top slide indicates, you need to click on the word notification. This system was originally set up for just notification systems, but was expanded. So please don't get caught up on that tab. The second slide is where you will see the application types populate. Click on the apply button next to alternative labeling plan. The rest of how to get through this application is in the online tutorial. And again, I've placed the link. Last, here are some important links and the contact email. IMERC@NMOA.org is the best way to reach someone related to mercury-added product reporting. It's an email address that goes to more than one person, and it remains the same regardless of the staff. So IMERC hopes that this will be helpful. We thank you so much for your time, and we're going to move into a question session.